Now, back to America's Workforce. Here's Ed Flash Ferens.
And welcome back to the show. Don't forget, you can check us out on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. Twitter handle is at AWF Union Podcast. By the way, this next segment brought to you in part by the United Labor Agency, celebrating 50 years this year. Started in 1971 in Cleveland, Ohio, and going strong. You can find more at ulagency.org. In fact, Dave Megenhart, the executive director, will be joining us next Wednesday. Right now, let's go to line number one. Welcome back to the show, Gina Walsh. Gina is with the Heat and Frost Insulators, another proud sponsor of America's Workforce. Website to go to is Mechanical Insulators, LMCT. You can also go to the website insulators.org. And Gina has been with the Insulators for a long time, and she's here to talk about Climate Jobs Illinois. Hey, Gina, welcome back to the show. Thanks for joining us once again.
Thanks for having me, Flash. I hope everything's well with you. Yeah.
Pretty good. No complaints. It's hard to believe that this year is charging through. I mean, we got the holiday weekend, the Memorial Holiday weekend coming up. But a lot of things are happening. Biden's got a very ambitious agenda. I want to get into that. I want to talk about Climate Jobs Illinois, and there's a lot of labor groups that are supporting this. But you know what? It's been a while since we had you on the show. Why don't you refresh our listeners with your background? And I'll tell you, it's a diverse background. Starting out with the Insulators back in 79, and then you got into politics, and then you're also involved in the construction trades, national trades, of trying to get more women in the trades. I mean, there's a lot of parts to Gina Walsh. So moving
parts.
A lot of moving parts. Okay, talk about that to us.
Well, I ended up, I really enjoyed the time I spent in the field as a mechanical insulator. It was something I didn't start out to do when I left high school, but college was not in the cards for me. I wasn't interested in continuing in education, and I ended up continuing my education in an apprenticeship program. So I did go back to school, and I received an education that has served me well over the last 40-some-odd years. I've raised a family on that salary, and I never looked at it as a job. It was always a career, and it was a career that sustained myself and my family. My daughter is an insulator now. So she college degree, and she said, I want to do what you did. I don't want to teach. So a lot of women don't look towards the trades as a traditional path, and I hope that I'm doing my part to change that for women in the future and even women in transition as we move through time. A lot of things have happened over the year with the pandemic, and folks change jobs often, especially the younger people now, not like when I was starting out. Once you had a job, that was where you stayed. That was your career path. That isn't
right.
True. If you look at the numbers now, these young people change jobs all the time, and what a great path for women to become members of a labor organization and to learn a trade. It pays well. It has great benefits, and it's so satisfying. It's an accomplishment I'm very proud of. I've worked in all aspects of the industry, and I have enjoyed every minute of it. But, you do other things in your life, and I was always involved politically in my community since I was a kid, before I was with the Insulators. And I ran for a position on a fire board in 1993, and I really enjoyed it. And I was approached, about 10 years later, by a fella that I'd known all my life. I'd worked on his campaigns. He was a House member in Missouri, and he was going to be termed out, and he was looking to recruit somebody to run for his seat. He asked me. I did. And I spent 8 years in the Missouri House of Representatives. And I was still working as an insulator that entire time. We're a part-time legislature here. We were in session January through May, only Monday afternoons through Thursday afternoons. So I would work Fridays. I'd work most Mondays till about noon, get ready, drive up to Jeff City, perform my legislative duties, and head back to the city and in my job. But it was fast. It was hurried a lot of times, but I really enjoyed it. It interfered sometimes in family life, but sometimes, life just gets in the way of life. And, it's so true. The different aspects of your life intersect and they run over each other, and that's just part of life.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed both positions. It was a learning experience because we are a citizen legislature here in Missouri. There's very little requirements to run for public office. There's an age requirement and a residency requirement, and that's about it. So we have people from all walks of life that serve in our state legislature here in Missouri, and a lot of the legislatures across the country are citizen legislatures. I serve with doctors and lawyers, farmers, nurses, teachers. So it was a very, very interesting group, and we didn't always agree on a lot of things, but, the important things I think we muddled through over the years. I came into that business at the time where my party lost its power in the state of Missouri. For the first time in 50 years, we weren't driving the bus. We weren't in charge of the state capitol. So it was very interesting. It was a transitional period for both parties. And some days it was pretty rough. And we were all on a learning curve, but we all learned to work through it together. And sometimes it's good and sometimes not so good. But it's still a process and it's ongoing. And it was the same way in the Senate. I enjoyed my time in the Senate, but I'm enjoying my time just as much, if not more, with the Insulators Labor Management Cooperative Trust. It was time for a new chapter being termed out, and I have enjoyed this period. I've been with them the last year and a half, I guess. I've learned a lot. There's a learning curve to this job, and you don't just take the insulator off the pipe rack and expect them to know everything. And my boss has been very patient with me. He's quite something. He has educated me, and he has pushed me to learn things on a faster pace than I ever thought I could. So I've really had a good time with this, and I think that with whatever you do in life, as long as you go into it with an attitude that you're going to enjoy it, and it's not just a job, that you'll do just fine. And I think that is the attitude I've been carrying with me since I've been with the LMCT, and I've enjoyed every minute of it.
I could tell just in your voice, Gina, you are a fireball, and I really appreciate you coming on the show and kind of laying it out on what you have done so far, and certainly you're not done yet. Well, let's get into the Climate Jobs Illinois, which is right next to Missouri, and the impact. And this whole debate, and it is a debate, and there's some pushback. We say, wait a minute, we can't go climate jobs, solar, wind, they don't pay with fossil fuel, the refineries, we can't go in that direction. But eventually it's going to go in that direction. I guess we have to do some more organizing in various parts of solar and wind. But you've got a lot of labor components on board here. Let's start right there, and maybe you can give us some of the components of Climate Jobs Illinois. Go ahead.
Well, Climate Jobs is a national organization, and they have a group of climate job folks working in Illinois, and thus Climate Jobs Illinois, CJI. You're right. You're right about everything you said about the industry and what's coming. So it's best that we be on board and not be left behind. In Climate Jobs Illinois, it's a coalition of labor organizations advocating for a pro-worker, pro-climate agenda in the state of Illinois. And the whole premise is that we don't get left behind, that our good-paying jobs we have a place in this new industry. There are so many groups that belong to it. The AFL, the Illinois AFL is part of it, the Chicago Federation of Labor, Chicago and Cook County Building and Construction Trades Council has a seat at the table. The Chicago Carpenters Union has a seat at the table. Our association has 2 seats at the table, as do a couple of the other organizations. I sit on it for the LMCT, and Bill Mannion out of Local 17 sits on it. He's in Chicago. The electrical workers sit on it, and it's not just the building trades. that sit on the Climate Jobs Illinois Council. The teachers' unions sit on it. SEIU State Council has a seat at the table. The UAW, Region 4, they have a seat at the table. And the leadership of the coalition is a guy named Tim Dre. He's with the AFL-CIO. He's the president. And Pat Devaney, he's the secretary-treasurer of the AFL-CIO. He's on it. We had an executive director, Nikki Baczynski, and she was tapped to go to work in the new administration in Washington, D.C., and we hired a guy named Joe Duffy. Joe is our new executive director, and I knew him from some of his work in Missouri through my legislative career. I had met Joe. So we're moving forward with this, and the whole premises is that we have a voice here, that we have a coalition of folks that want to make sure our members are heard, and that we move forward in this new area and make sure labor isn't left behind, make sure it's a pro-worker agenda, that it's a pro-climate agenda in the state of Illinois. So I'm excited about it. I have worked really hard with the group to bring awareness to the mechanical insulation industry. Part of that initiative is the Carbon-Free Schools Initiative. And if you look up Climate Jobs Illinois, you'll see that there's about 10 white sheets that cross over all aspects of this legislation. But the one that I've worked on a lot was the Carbon-Free Schools. And in that section, it's going to require the integration of heating and cooling efficiency in rooftop solar, the building envelope. But the most important thing to me, it would include as well mechanical insulation audits and inspections, and require that if they take advantage of any incentives, that mechanical insulation is part of the solution. We're often forgot about. You've talked with Pete Alamini, our executive director, before, and you know that Pete's probably said, well, they don't think insulation's sexy enough. And I've heard him say it before, but if you read everything you can read about it, we are part of the solution. We are low-hanging fruit. It would be so easy to improve things across the country in these plants just by the simple fact that you're using mechanical insulation. You know, the installation of insulation, it should be a priority and not just an option when it comes to retrofitting or new builds throughout the country. We have meaningful programs, and if you install mechanical insulation, if you maintain it and you inspect it, that's part of the battle. You're already winning. Mm-hmm. And that's what I'm trying to do with Climate Jobs Illinois, but it has many, many components. One of them is they want to make sure that we protect the nuclear industry over in Illinois, which is so vitally important to the citizens of Illinois and the folks that work in those plants. I worked in nuclear plants in Illinois and Missouri. We only have one in Missouri, all through my career. And it provides a clean energy to the folks that benefit from those plants, good jobs with good pensions, nice benefits, health insurance. You know, and
Sure.
That's all anybody in this world wants.
You got it.
They want to make a living. People don't always want to light the world on fire and be millionaires. They just want to make a decent living for themselves and their family. And when I say decent living, they want a job that can sustain them and their family, send their kids to school, and let them have advantages that they didn't have, maybe go on a vacation with their family every year, and live a comfortable life. Nobody's asking to be millionaires. But these jobs provide these things, and at the same time would be providing clean energy, eliminating greenhouse gases, and bringing us into a carbon-free society.
Well, as we indicated earlier, a lot of good components to Climate Jobs Illinois. Gina, I have to take a quick break. We're speaking with Gina Walsh on behalf of the Heat and Frost Insulators, LMCT. Mechanical Insulators, LMCT.org is the website. We'll talk about job growth on Climate Jobs Illinois and what the projections are. Later in the show, Dean Benson will be joining us on behalf of Local 120, the International Brotherhood of Teamsters, talking about the marathon workers being locked out in Minnesota. Back in a few minutes.
This is America's Workforce. Now, back to Ed Flash Ferens with America's Workforce.
And welcome back to the show. Don't forget we're available on 5 platforms. That includes Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify, as well as Pandora. When you get an opportunity, just take a minute and do this. Sign up and receive our shows on a regular basis and eventually give us a rating on our show, America's Workforce. 5 stars would be greatly appreciated. Gina Walsh is on our live line right now, and she's with the Heat and Frost Insulators, LMCT, one of the many proud sponsors of this show. Gina, I remember some months back talking to the executive director of the Mechanical Insulators, LMCT, Pete Almini, and he had a projection on Climate Jobs Illinois. I believe it was maybe 20, 30,000. Maybe you can fill in some of the blanks here. And we're looking years out. I mean, these aren't jobs. And first of all, there's training involved, and maybe you could speak to that. But we're talking 25, 30 years out, right?
We are, and if you look at what Climate Jobs Illinois, what the legislation is trying to do, you know, we didn't talk about it. You talked about the electrification of vehicles. We're all moving to electric cars, right? By 2050, they're telling you that there are not going to be any gas-powered vehicles on the streets. You're going to need places to charge those kind of things. These are just some of the aspects that we're looking at as we move forward. Solar panels on roofs. Imagine fixing all the problems with old mechanical systems in schools across just the state of Illinois. That's a lot of work for a lot of men and women in the building trades, from the plumbers and pipe fitters to the electricians to the carpenters to the insulators. And on down the line, you have to build the infrastructure. But once you build the infrastructure, you have to maintain the infrastructure. And in my industry, that's part of the problem. We put the pipe and the mechanical insulation in, and we walk away from it, and oftentimes it's not maintained. And when we're looking at these carbon-free school initiatives across the state of Illinois, we want to look at the schools that are already built, that have systems in place. We want to make sure that they've been maintained, and that if they haven't been maintained, that they have programs across their school districts that they start to maintain these mechanical insulation systems. Because if you don't maintain them, it doesn't help in the future. It only helps for the immediate, right? So when you're maintaining something, it's just, you don't just change your oil once in your automobile, right?
Right.
You have to take care of your vehicle. You have to take care of your home. And this should be as easy as that. You look at it in every type of building across the country. If you don't maintain the systems in that building, then you have a problem. But Climate Jobs Illinois is going to provide so many jobs for working men and women in new industries, in the solar industries, in the wind industry. But we're also going to still be in the traditional industry of building our schools, but with new systems and new technologies that are going to move us into a carbon-free society.
Now, Gina, this goes beyond Illinois. I'm reading that Michigan is involved. There's the Michigan Council on Climate Solutions. Is that kind of a similar thing that's going on there that you're part of?
Well, that's just getting off the ground. Governor Whitmer had an executive order in 2020-182. She formed an advisory body within the Department of the Environment of the Great Lakes and Energy, which is, it's got a nice little acronym, which is DEGE. But it's tasked to advise the governor and the department in formulating the implementation of a healthy climate plan. And it has people from across different industries that sit on the climate board. I am part of a couple of the working groups, but I am not on the governor's council. You need to be a member or a resident of Michigan to be on the climate council. And that is tasked with coming up all these working groups. There's there's over 10 of them. I'm on the buildings and construction and then industrial working groups. And we hear from different parts of the industry from folks that can show us how to reduce their carbon footprint in Michigan. So they're not as far along as the Illinois group. We're actually working on Illinois. We're working on legislation. It's their last week in session in Illinois. But in Michigan, it's more of an educational process right now. But it's moving quickly because these reports need to be on the governor's desk by the end of 2021. And then the governor's council will move forward from there.
Gotcha.
So that's been a very interesting learning experience for me because I didn't myself, even though I'm in the industry, I didn't realize how many moving parts and how many different industries converge in one place to provide a carbon-free, clean agenda for our country. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of education going on right now across the country, especially in Michigan, and I have enjoyed those meetings. They're very lengthy. They're 2 to 3 hours at a time. They're every other week on both committees, so you can imagine the different groups that are coming through and how they're trying to educate us with the information they have and how we can advise the governor's council to move forward.
Gina, this sounds like a moment to me. I mean, we're at the crossroads here, and there's been some pushback. You know that. You know it's like there's no such thing as climate change, and I think people are starting to realize, you know what, we better do something. And the trades are definitely involved. It's good to see so many trades are involved. But you agree with that? You figured this is the time to do this, right?
I do, and if we're not involved, we'll get left behind. Do we want to be left behind? I know I certainly don't. And I truly believe, my office sits, I look right out a big picture window in my office, and when April 15th which is supposed to be tax day, and there's 1.5 inches of snow on the ground in Missouri, something's up. We don't get snow in April here. It's very rare. And the next day it's 65, 70 degrees. So, things are changing.
Yeah.
The industry changing. Is the industry change? If we're not on board, we'll get left behind.
Yep. Yeah, well, we got snow on Mother's Day, which was just a couple of weeks ago, and yesterday it was near 90. So I know what you're talking about. Oh, Gina, you're great to talk to. I thank you so much for joining us again. Gina Walsh on behalf of the Heat and Frost Insulators, LMCT. Check out the website, Mechanical Insulators, LMCT. Also, the national website. If those listening right now want to get involved in an apprenticeship program, the jobs are there. Go to insulators.org, and various cities around the country are offering wonderful apprenticeship programs to get involved in the Heat and Frost Insulators. Well, you take care, stay safe, and let's talk down the road, okay, Gina?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. And if you are interested in Climate Jobs Illinois, building trade members in that region, can go online to Climate Jobs Illinois and find out how they can participate in this initiative.